The stars were quiet the night Earth fell silent. For the first time in decades, the orbital comms array over Luna Station stopped transmitting. No alerts, no status reports, no distress beacons, just static. I was stationed on Vanguard 9, a civilian-class frigate refitted for reconnaissance. Not exactly the war machine you'd expect on the front line of a galactic incident. I wasn't a hero, just a pilot with an attitude problem and too many scars under my uniform. The brass used to say I had a chip on my shoulder the size of a colony block. They weren't wrong. We were halfway between Proxima and the Kuiper Belt when we received the blackout confirmation. No contact from Earth or any of its colonies. Every human-coded signal went dark within a 15-minute window. That wasn't coincidence. That was a statement. The galaxy had underestimated us. Again. And they thought they got away with it. I remember the look on Commander Renner's face when he read the official message. Guy always looked calm, like he played poker with black holes for fun. But when the data came in, he went pale, like the blood drained straight out of him. "Protocol Iron Sky," he said. I nearly choked on my stim gum. "You're serious?" His eyes were fixed on the holoscreen. They hit us first. Now we show them what we've really got. Iron Sky was a myth, a story whispered in military circles, a failsafe, a contingency, one they swore never existed. It meant one thing. Earth was ready for this. Humanity knew this day would come, and when it did, we'd answer with everything we had kept hidden from the galaxy. You see, the Intergalactic Union thought they were dealing with primitives who'd barely figured out warp. We played dumb. Let them think we were harmless. Let them think we were small. But underground bunkers weren't just for nuclear history lessons. They were manufacturing hubs, orbital debris fields, masked spaceports, and those missing trillion-dollar budgets spent on the real fleet, our true Armada. And I had just received new orders. "Pilot Miles Grant," the message read. "You are hereby activated under Article 9B of the Sol Defense Pact. Report to Citadel Helix for immediate transfer. Final destination, Omega Command." No signature. Just a code I hadn't seen since my Black Ops days. A time I thought I left behind after losing my brother in the last border conflict with the Zalari Dominion. He died screaming into an open comm, asking why no help ever came. That was the day I stopped believing in the system. Now the system was calling me back. We jumped within 2 hours. No hesitation, no excuses, just fuel, weapons, and a suicide-level trajectory through unregulated space. As we slipped past the last known patrol lines of the Corin Syndicate, I started seeing things that weren't on any maps. Massive stealth carriers, dormant orbital cannons embedded in asteroids, mines shaped like space junk. We were entering the dead zone, human territory no alien had ever seen. And then it happened. As we entered the Helix corridor, the stars disappeared, blotted out by shadows of steel. Not one, not 10, hundreds, thousands, ships of every size and class, titans with rotating gravity cores, interceptors shaped like jagged metal wings, weapons platforms the size of moons. And hanging in the center was the Leviathan, our capital dreadnought. I couldn't even speak. Nobody could. You don't talk when you see God wake up from a long sleep. A voice crackled through the channel, calm, male, and deeply human. "To all surviving Earth units, this is Omega Command. The time for silence is over. They hit our home. They killed our families. They burned our world." The comm paused, like it was giving us a moment to feel it in our bones. Now we remind them who the apex species really is. My fists clenched around the throttle. We weren't the prey anymore. We were the storm. They called it the Leviathan for a reason. Even from the cockpit of my recon ship, which wasn't exactly a junker, the dreadnought looked like it belonged in a nightmare more than a war zone. 7 kilometers long. Covered in reactive armor plating so dense it distorted nearby gravity fields, cannons rotated in every direction like they were alive, and along the spine, a glowing red seam pulsed like a heartbeat, housing the thermonuclear singularity core. That wasn't a ship. That was Earth's retribution forged in metal. I wasn't alone. Frigates, destroyers, missile barges, and stealth cruisers cluttered the space around us, like a swarm of angry wasps circling the Queen. Some looked decades old, like they were dragged from retirement. Others looked fresh, like experimental builds straight off classified black site engineering decks. But every one of them had one thing in common. They were hidden from the galaxy until now. When Omega Command activated, it wasn't just a signal. It was the middle finger to every smug alien council that mocked us behind our backs. We had played nice for too long. Let them use Earth as a trade zone. Let them bribe our governments with advanced tech that we'd reverse-engineered 10 years earlier. They thought we were stupid. They thought we were fragmented, that we'd never unify. They forgot one thing. Humans don't forget betrayal, not when it burns down your home planet. "Pilot Miles Grant," a cold voice crackled through the comm. "You are to dock with Bay Sigma on Leviathan immediately. Your recon ship will be transferred. Omega Directive 7H is now in effect." I guided the ship forward in silence, weaving through the crowd of steel monsters, my hands steady but jaw clenched. I wasn't just flying into a warship. I was flying into history. The moment I landed, I knew things were different. No bright lights, no flags, just grim soldiers, worn-faced engineers, and silent officers, all moving with purpose. This wasn't a ceremonial army. This was war-forged, no bullshit, stripped-down humanity. The version we kept hidden from alien eyes. A tall man in gray armor met me at the loading bay. No smile, no salute. "You're Grant?" he asked. "Yeah. I read your file. You've been blacklisted, demoted, and accused of insubordination 5 times. "And yet here I am," I said. He stared at me. "They said you watched your brother die during the Corin conflict." I didn't respond. He already knew the answer. "Good," he nodded. "You hate them. That's what we need." He handed me a data chip. "This is your new identity. From now on, you're Commander Miles Grant of Shadow Squadron 3. You answer only to Omega Command." I raised an eyebrow. "Shadow Squadron?" "They're ghosts," he said. "We use them for things we don't want on record. Deep raids, planet strikes, disruption ops, things that make alien empires bleed before they even know we're there." "And what about my recon ship?" He looked me dead in the eye. "It's scrap. You won't be flying toys anymore." That's when I saw her. Tucked beneath the central launch bay was a sleek black ship that looked like it had been carved from the void itself. No cockpit windows, no markings, just matte black plating and 2 massive engines mounted like wings. "What is that?" I asked. He smirked for the first time. "That's the Vengeance-class Phantom, only 7 ever made. Stealth drives, adaptive armor, neural interface, runs off a triple core. And the weapons system is synced directly to your cognitive spikes. You're handing that over to me?" "No, you're going to earn it. First mission launches in 2 hours. You're not here to train, you're here to kill." We jumped through 2 unmarked wormholes to get to our target. Zanar Prime, a mid-level supply hub for the Intergalactic Union. Mostly Corin and Selith personnel. No civilians, just a fortress masquerading as a logistics center. They thought no one would dare attack it. That made it perfect. I launched with 6 others. Shadow Squadron 3. No names, just call signs. Mine was Rook. The others, Ghost, Templar, Wraith, Scorch, Reaper, veterans, psychos, killers with nothing left to lose. They didn't talk much. and that was fine by me. The Phantom flew like it could read my thoughts. I didn't need instruments. I felt the ship. Every drift, every tilt, every charge of the particle cannon. I was part of it. No cockpit lights, just the HUD linked to my eyes and the cold hum of vengeance vibrating in my bones. As we breached the outer perimeter of Xenar Prime, the orbital defense grid lit up, but it was already too late. Shadow Squadron didn't fight fair. We dropped EMP disruptors disguised as asteroid fragments a day earlier. The Corran didn't even realize their sensors were fried until we were tearing through their hulls like rabid dogs. Ghost, flank left. Cut the comms relay, I barked. Copy. Templar, with me. We take the command deck. We pierced the upper tower in a silent breach, our blades humming with molecular disruption fields. No warning shots. No demands. I drove my blade straight into the throat of the base commander, a smug bastard with medals and arrogance, sitting in his ivory chair like a king. He died confused, like he couldn't believe humans had the guts to strike first. We didn't just kill them, we made it personal. When the smoke cleared, Xenar Prime was nothing but a memory. Every system wiped, every server burned, every body either ash or drifting in vacuum. We left a single message carved into the bulkhead. This was for Earth. We are not done. Back on the Leviathan, morale shifted. Word spread fast. We weren't supposed to win that clean. We weren't supposed to be that lethal. But we were. And suddenly, other fleets started awakening. Sub-fleets from Mars. Cloaked stations in Neptune's shadow. Underground railgun arrays in Alpha Centauri. Whole divisions that had been living off-grid for years, waiting for the call. And still, the galaxy didn't believe it. The Intergalactic Union held a press conference the next day, led by some nine-eyed bureaucrat from the Thalian Republic. He called us rogue aggressors, said our actions endangered galactic stability. What a joke. They glassed Earth and expected us to apologize? The real joke was this. The Union still thought we were retaliating out of desperation. They hadn't seen what Omega Command had been building for the past 50 years. The Armada was just the beginning. Behind it, deep in classified systems beneath the surface of Jupiter's moons, we had Project Blackstar, a weapon they couldn't even comprehend. Not yet, but soon. Still, the cost of revenge started showing. Scorch didn't make it back from our second op. Took a plasma round to the chest mid-jump. Gone in a flash. No burial, just a floating tag left behind. I didn't mourn him the way I should have. I just added his name to the list in my HUD, beneath my brother's. The galaxy thought it was ending a nuisance, but it only awakened our rage. They underestimated humans because we were too loud, too emotional, too unpredictable. But that was our strength. We weren't genetically superior. We weren't the smartest species in the stars. But we were the most dangerous, because we remember. We adapt. And when we come for you, we don't stop. That night, I stood alone in the observation deck of the Leviathan. Staring at the stars, I felt something burn behind my ribs. Not fear, not pride, resolve. They hit us thinking we'd crumble. They wanted us silent. But all they did was give humanity permission to become the monster we used to keep locked away, and we were just getting started. The next strike wasn't surgical, it was annihilation. Shadow Squadron wasn't meant for full-scale war, but things were changing. Fast. After Xenar Prime, Union systems went on red alert. Patrols doubled. Checkpoints appeared in every warp lane. They were scared, and rightly so. But instead of facing what they'd done, what they'd started, they played politics. They called us terrorists, declared Earth a non-recognized rogue entity, said humanity's retaliation was a violation of interstellar peace accords. Peace? Was it peaceful when they burned Sydney to ash? When they cracked the Andes into dust? when the last transmission out of Nairobi was a child crying into static? They wanted peace after they buried our home? We had a word for that. Cowards. Omega Command didn't issue another warning. This time they gave us a list. Target, Nile Station, a Selith weapons depot orbiting a dead planet in the Centauri expanse. Strategic value, high. Civilian population, 0. Priority, eliminate without trace. We launched in formation. 12 squadrons, not just shadows. We weren't ghosts this time. We were the Fangs. And Leviathan would fire her main cannon for the first time in recorded history. I still remember the moment she did. The blast didn't look real. It didn't sound real. It was like the universe itself paused. A beam of pure, compressed antimatter fired from her spine, thicker than a city block. It moved like lightning, but it dragged sound with it somehow, like space tore in its path. Nile Station didn't explode. It vanished. 1 second it was there. The next, nothing but a dust cloud evaporating into darkness. No debris, no screams, no warning. Just gone. The galaxy had seen humanity's Armada. Now they saw our resolve. And we made sure everyone heard about it. Our intel teams hacked Union comms, beaming uncensored footage to every corner of civilized space. No edits, no spin, just raw vengeance in high definition. The message burned across every alien screen. You struck first, we strike last. Back on the Leviathan, the tension turned to hunger. The quiet kind. The kind you feel behind your ribs, that you don't talk about in mess halls or training sims. A need to keep going, to not stop, because stopping means feeling again. And if we started feeling, we'd break. Reaper, quietest of us all, took a plasma burn to the arm. Didn't even scream. Just stared at the wound like it was nothing. Medics patched him, and he was back in the sim pod 10 minutes later. That was how it was now. Pain didn't slow us down. Emotion didn't have room anymore. Not after what we'd seen. Not after what they did. But not everyone was numb. The message came through my private channel, encrypted with an old key from my recon days, one I hadn't seen in years. I knew the code. My brother used it before he died. I stared at the blinking signal for 5 minutes before opening it. It wasn't from him, obviously. He was space dust. But someone was still using his channel. The message was short. He knew what Omega was before he died. He wanted to warn you. You need to hear the truth. Attached was a nav point. Deep space, unmarked. It could have been bait. Could have been Union counterintel trying to pick off a lone pilot. But something in me, it wasn't instinct, it was deeper, needed to know. I didn't ask for permission. I stole my Phantom, disabled the trace beacon, and slipped out during a training exercise. 26 hours later, I was drifting near a black dwarf star at coordinates nobody should have known existed. That's where I found her. The Nomad. A human ship, decades older than Leviathan, half covered in asteroid scars, its engines dead, systems failing, but alive, barely. I docked manually. No auto assist, no landing crew. Inside, I found Elder One, that's what he called himself. An old man, older than anyone I'd ever seen, skin like cracked parchment, eyes like ice. He didn't move, didn't speak at first. Then he turned and said, "Your brother died for the wrong war." I froze. You know me? I knew him. I trained him. He wasn't supposed to be on that battlefield. He was a soldier. No. Elder One shook his head. He was a messenger, and they silenced him before he could speak. What message? He limped over to a console. Ancient tech, older than Union records. He tapped it once. A hologram blinked to life, a rotating structure I didn't recognize. That, he whispered, is the cradle. What is it? Where it all began. Not just for Earth, for everything. The first sentient construct. The seed of all galactic intelligence. I stared, confused. You're saying we built that? No, he said, voice shaking. It built us. He told me things I wasn't meant to know. That humans weren't native to Earth. That we were seeded, grown, evolved, monitored. That the Union wasn't afraid of us because of our weapons. They were afraid because the cradle recognized us. Because we were the only species that ever found it again. And instead of submitting, we buried it. We locked it away, destroyed all records, and swore never to speak of it, because we knew what it meant. If the galaxy found out that humans were chosen, or worse, that we had rejected the entity that birthed civilization, there would be no treaties, no peace, no negotiations, only extinction. Omega Command wasn't just a retaliation machine. It was a preemptive cleansing system, designed to wipe out any trace of the cradle and any species that came close to it again. That's what this war was really about. Not Earth, not vengeance, but silence. The Union found the cradle, and we responded the only way we knew how. With fire. I returned to Leviathan with that knowledge boiling in my blood, but I said nothing, because who would listen? The war machine was already roaring. More systems fell each week, more ships built, more lives sacrificed. We weren't fighting to protect Earth anymore. We were fighting to keep a secret buried in space, a truth so big it could end everything. And part of me didn't even care. I just wanted blood. I just wanted them all to suffer for what they did to us, to my brother, to our planet, even if we were wrong, even if they were right to fear us. When the next target came, Harridan 4, a mining world, we didn't ask questions. We launched. We struck. We erased it. And then we carved new words into the wreckage. Fear the cradle. Fear humanity. We didn't ask questions anymore. We followed orders. We burned targets. And we moved on. That's how Omega Command kept the machine alive, by never letting us stop long enough to think. After Harridan 4, they sent us to Sector X-19, a forbidden zone. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was untouched. The Union kept it locked away, fenced in by red light warnings and orbital mines. Religious space, they called it. Sacred ground. What that really meant was, they were hiding something. So we did what humans do best. We trespassed. Omega sent 3 dreadnoughts, 20 Shadow-class destroyers, and Leviathan herself. It was overkill, and we all knew it. But this wasn't about tactical value anymore. This was about sending a message. I wasn't flying the Phantom that day. Instead, I stood on the command deck of Leviathan, watching the void like a man watches a storm on the horizon, knowing it's coming straight for him. Admiral Knox stood beside me, cold, unflinching, the kind of man who looked like he'd been born in vacuum. "You've been quiet lately," he said without looking. "Just thinking," he smirked. "That's dangerous. Not thinking's worse." Knox turned then, sharp eyes locking onto me. "This isn't a thinking war, Commander. This is a cleansing." I said nothing. He didn't stop. "You've seen what the Union is, the lies they tell, the things they hide. You want to talk about truth? Truth is, they had this coming." "They were afraid of us," I muttered. "They should be." I didn't respond, because I didn't know who I was agreeing with anymore, him or the enemy. As we approached the heart of X-19, things started feeling wrong. Not like danger, not like traps. It felt ancient. Every ship's system started glitching, not failure, just interference. Static across HUDs, AI assistants going silent, crew members reporting strange dreams, and always the same image, a circular black sun surrounded by stone-like spires. That's when I knew. This was where the cradle had been, or maybe still was, and we weren't alone. Out of nowhere, a single ship appeared. Not a fleet, not a battalion, just one, massive, organic, like it had grown from the void itself, covered in spines and glowing with pale blue veins. It didn't fire, didn't move. It just waited. The bridge went dead silent. "Identification?" Knox barked. "Negative," the tech replied. "It doesn't match any known species." The Leviathan powered weapons. "Hold," I said. Everyone turned to look at me like I'd just slapped the Admiral. He stared. "What did you say?" I stepped forward. "We came to this zone for recon, not annihilation. We don't even know what that is." "It's alien, that's enough." I clenched my jaw. "So was Earth, once." He didn't like that, but he gave the signal to hold fire. For now. Then the ship spoke, not with words, not through comms. It just echoed into our minds, a voice like metal grinding through time. "You walk the path of extinction." My knees buckled. I wasn't the only one. A dozen crew collapsed on the deck, bleeding from their noses. Some began screaming, visions flooding their heads, worlds dying, stars collapsing, children crying out in languages they never learned. "You carry the fire of the cradle." Then it stopped, like someone severed a string tied to our brains. We all staggered to our feet. "Fire on that thing," Knox said, his voice trembling. "No," I said, "not yet." He turned to me, furious. "They've violated our minds. You call that peace?" "I call that a message." He stepped closer. "You've been compromised, Commander. I can smell it on you. You've been to the Nomad. You saw the old man." I froze. How the hell did he know that? "I've got eyes everywhere, son," he growled. "You think you're special? You think you've uncovered something new? We've known about the cradle for 80 years. "Then why lie?" I snapped. "Why build all this? Why wipe out entire species instead of just talking to them?" Knox's smile was the kind men only give right before they burn the world. Because if they find it first, they control evolution. My blood went cold. "The cradle doesn't just teach," he continued. "It rewrites, it chooses. You think we're human now? Wait until the cradle blesses us, makes us more." I took a step back. "You want to turn humanity into something else?" "No," Knox said. "I want to turn us into something better." He turned to the gunnery officer. "Fire the Leviathan. Now." And that's when I snapped. I drew my sidearm, pressed it to the officer's temple. The entire bridge froze. "You fire that weapon," I said, "and we start a war with something older than time." "You're out of line," Knox hissed. I didn't care anymore. "We came here chasing revenge, but now I know. We're chasing power. That's what this has been about the whole time." I looked at the crew. How many more systems do we burn before we realize we've become the monsters they always said we were? Nobody moved. Knox raised his hand. "Security!" I fired first. Right into his leg. He dropped, screaming. I turned to the comms officer. "Send a message, open channel, to the alien vessel." She hesitated. "Do it." The screen flickered. That black sun image reappeared, this time pulsing. I stepped forward. "This is Commander Miles Grant, human designation. I speak not for my species, but for myself. We seek the truth. We don't want this war, but if you threaten Earth again, we will defend ourselves." Silence. Then, "One among you remembers." A new set of coordinates appeared on screen. Deep, far beyond Union territory, past any human chart. "Come alone, or not at all." The signal cut. Knox was still writhing on the deck, blood pooling around his uniform. I looked at the other officers. None moved to help him. That told me everything I needed to know. Within the hour, I was gone. Phantom reactivated, warp drives hot, and for the first time in months, I was flying alone again. No squadrons, no armadas, no politics, just me and the stars, heading toward a place no human had ever seen, where the cradle waited, where the truth would either redeem us or doom us all. The coordinates weren't in any star chart. No warp lane existed to them. They didn't belong to space as I knew it. It was like flying into the bones of a forgotten god. I was 37 hours out from the Leviathan when the Phantom's systems began to stutter. Not malfunction, just slow. Like time itself was thickening. Even the stars outside looked wrong, faded, like ghosts of themselves. The onboard AI, usually silent, whispered in my ear, "You are entering prohibited dimensional strata, mapping invalid, logical paradox forming." And still, I pushed forward. I'd followed every order ever shoved down my throat, killed for them, burned entire worlds on command. And for what? Vengeance? No, not anymore. Now I was chasing the truth. The moment I exited warp, I thought I was dead. The Phantom groaned as reality around me twisted. I wasn't in space anymore. I was in a field of light and shadow, geometry that bent without logic, colors that didn't belong in any known spectrum. Shapes moved in silence. Mountains formed from nothing, then dissolved. Rings of glass floated in infinite loops. And at the center of it all was the cradle. Not a structure, a presence. Like someone had built a temple from silence itself. I didn't land. I didn't dock. I just arrived. The Phantom drifted into a soft orbit, as if something invisible had taken hold of it and gently placed me where I needed to be. The hatch opened without me touching anything. No vacuum, no cold. I stepped out onto a bridge made of light and shadow, with no floor below and no stars above. Just the cradle, pulsing ahead like a sleeping heart. And it spoke, but not with words. It showed me. I was 5 years old again. My mother was still alive. My brother wasn't a memory yet. We were on Earth, before the ash, before the war. Then the image shifted. My brother, older, bleeding, crawling through mud in a Corin trench, screaming my name over a busted comm unit. Another shift. The Leviathan firing, Harridan 4 crumbling, children screaming. I saw myself, reflected in the fire. A killer. A machine. The final shift came, and it wasn't memory. It was future. Earth reborn, towering cities, silent skies, no war, no humanity as I knew it. Just something else. Smooth, cold, controlled, perfect. Then the cradle asked me the question. Not in words, but in meaning. Do you want peace or freedom? I stood frozen because I knew what it meant. Peace meant order, control, surrender. The cradle would guide us, evolve us, turn us into something other. No pain, no rage, no suffering, but no choice either. Freedom meant chaos. Humanity would remain wild, dangerous, passionate, violent, capable of beauty and horror in the same breath. It was offering me the power to choose for all of us, and I didn't know if I deserved it. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Human, but not. Tall, perfectly symmetrical, eyes like twin stars burning with ancient weight. "You're not the first to stand here," it said. Voice low, male, but not human. "You're the first to hesitate." I stared at him. "Who are you?" "I am the last of the architects. My name no longer matters. I speak for the cradle." "Why now?" I demanded. "Why reveal this now, after everything?" "Because you proved worthy," he said simply. "You made the galaxy bleed to find us. That is impressive. You think war is impressive? I think persistence is impressive. Even your rage, your grief, your refusal to die quietly." He paused. "That is why we chose you." I clenched my fists. "My brother, did he know?" "Yes, he tried to warn you, but the ones who fear the cradle silenced him." Omega Command? They seek evolution without sacrifice, control without understanding, power without reflection. My voice cracked. "So why give me the choice?" "Because you still feel guilt." I turned my back to him, stepping toward the cradle. It pulsed with knowing, Then something hit me, hard. Visions again, not mine. Humanity's future. One path. Union subjugation. Earth sterilized. The last remnants of our species turned into docile vassals under alien rule. Another, cradle-guided ascension. Humanity physically perfected, psychically linked. No more war, no more individuality. The third, no peace, no guidance, just us. Unleashed, the Armada growing, Earth reborn as a fortress, not a utopia. Humanity feared across galaxies. The cradle watched all of it, waiting. The architect stepped beside me. You can tell them the truth, or let them burn the galaxy in ignorance. What would you choose? I asked. He smiled. I am not human. I turned to the cradle, and I answered, I choose freedom. The light grew brighter. The cradle didn't argue. It simply gave me a gift, a single shard of its core, a black stone, warm to the touch, vibrating with power I couldn't explain. It slipped into my palm like it had always belonged there. Then the world collapsed around me. I woke up in the phantom. No bridge of light, no architect, just the void, and the stone resting on my chest. A data packet blinked on my HUD, coordinates encoded in frequencies beyond human design. A place where I could bring others, if I dared. I turned the phantom around and flew home. When I returned to human space, the war had escalated. Omega Command had wiped out 3 more alien worlds. The Union had declared humanity an extinction-level threat. The Leviathan now carried planet-killer warheads, and Admiral Knox? Dead. Assassinated in his sleep. A clean kill. No signs of struggle. Rumor said it was a mutiny. I didn't care, because I was carrying something bigger than him now. Something bigger than the war. I landed at Omega Citadel, unannounced, unauthorized. Security swarmed. They pointed rifles. I didn't flinch. I have a message, I said. They didn't listen, so I activated the shard. The entire facility froze. Lights dimmed. Gravity distorted. The shard hovered out of my hand, and every screen in the Citadel blinked alive. The image of the cradle burned into them, and a message echoed across all channels. The one who was chosen has returned. You burned the stars to find us. Now you face the question, do you seek dominance or truth? Then the screens went dark. The shard dropped cold again. The soldiers stood paralyzed. One by one they lowered their weapons. Not because they trusted me, but because they feared what was coming. I didn't speak. I just walked toward the command chamber. Because I knew. The real war hadn't started yet. It was coming. And this time, it wasn't about humanity proving itself to the galaxy. It was about proving we still deserved to exist at all. The silence in Omega Citadel was heavier than gravity. Even after the shard dimmed and dropped into my hand again, no one moved. They'd all seen it, felt it. Not just an image or a vision. A presence. Something that stared back through every screen like it was measuring us, judging. And for the first time since Earth burned, I felt something in those soldiers' eyes I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't anger, it wasn't pride, it was doubt. They looked at me like I'd just cracked open a secret they didn't want to know existed, and now that it was out, they couldn't unsee it. Couldn't go back to pretending they were just soldiers in a war. The war wasn't just with the galaxy anymore. It was inside us. Admiral Knox was gone. Dead in his sleep, his throat slit clean. The brass claimed it was an alien saboteur. But the whispers said different. Said it was one of our own. Said the high command fractured the minute I left. Half the leadership still wanted full extinction. The other half? They were afraid. Not of the Union, but of what we were becoming. Omega Citadel was a fortress built on secrets, and now they were bleeding through the cracks. The next day, I stood in front of the War Council. 10 of the most powerful human commanders left alive. each seated behind a curved table that looked more like a firing squad than a tribunal. Most of them I didn't know by name. Only reputation. The one in the middle? General Varric. They called him the Hammer of Europa. Big, square-jawed, face like a mountain, voice like a collapsing wall. "You've returned unauthorized," he growled. "You disobeyed fleet directives. You deserted your position. You incited spiritual panic among command-level personnel. You exposed classified history. And you brought this thing," he pointed at the shard pulsing on the table, "into the heart of our last operational base." I didn't blink. "And I'd do it again." "Why?" he snapped. "To show us hallucinations? Ghost stories? Your cradle could be an alien weapon." "You're asking us to surrender our greatest war effort to a myth." "No," I said. "I'm asking you to face the truth." He slammed a fist on the table. "We are the truth. We are the vengeance of a murdered planet, and vengeance doesn't hesitate. It consumes." "And where does it end?" I stepped forward. "When we've glassed every world, when there's nothing left but burning stars and dead children floating in vacuum, is that the future you want?" No one spoke, so I dropped the real bomb. The cradle gave me a second set of coordinates. That got their attention. Varric narrowed his eyes. "Where?" "Outside the Orion Arm, in dead space. It's calling us." "To what?" I looked him square in the face. "To judge us, not just me, all of us." Varric stood. "You're insane." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm the only one who's been there. Who stood in front of it and walked away with a choice." I placed the shard on the table. "You think it's a weapon? Use it. Try, see what happens." None of them touched it. They all just stared. I left them arguing behind locked doors. I didn't care what decision they came to, because mine had already been made. 3 days later, the first fracture happened. Fleet Command split in two. The Loyalists, the Purists, wanted to continue the war until the Union was dust and the cradle was destroyed. The rest, the Truthborn, they were calling us, wanted to follow the signal. A pilgrimage. One last chance to understand what we really are before we become something we can't control. Ships began defecting quietly. Whole wings, crews, scientists, engineers, people tired of burning, tired of killing. We didn't ask them to join. They chose. And soon, I wasn't alone anymore. The Phantom became our beacon. We retrofitted the ship into a command vessel fitted with data uplinks, encrypted comm arrays, and cradle signal amplifiers. They called it the Ararat now, named after the mythic mountain where survivors of the first flood began again. I didn't want the name, but they gave it anyway. They needed something to believe in. And I wasn't a man anymore. I was a symbol. But war doesn't end just because people leave it behind. The Purists struck first, hit one of our refugee ships outside the Helion Rift. No warning, no prisoners, just a floating graveyard. The message was clear. If you don't fight with us, you're the enemy. That night, I sat alone in the Ararat's war chamber, staring at the map of splintered humanity, half burning, half hoping, and all of it, mine now. I wasn't a pilot anymore. I was leading a resistance, and I had no damn idea how to win. "Permission to enter?" a voice asked behind me. It was Wraith, my old squad mate from Shadow Squadron, the man who never spoke unless someone was dying. He stepped in, removed his helmet. Eyes dark. Face unreadable. But I knew that look. "Heard about the Helion slaughter," he said. "That wasn't war. That was execution." I nodded. He looked at the cradle shard still pulsing beside me. "You think this thing really speaks for whatever's out there?" "It doesn't need to," I said. "It shows us what we already know, what we refuse to admit." "And what's that?" That we became the monster we were trying to kill. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "How many ships do we have left?" 17, plus 7 confirmed defectors en route. He looked me dead in the eyes. "That's not enough to survive." "No," I said, "but it's enough to reach the cradle, and if it gives us what I think it can." He nodded, then turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. "If we're wrong, you know they'll wipe us off the map." I gave him the only answer I had. Then let history say we tried to be something better. The next day, we jumped, all 17 ships, through a path that didn't exist on any chart, toward the final set of coordinates, into dead space. No turning back, no allies. Only the truth waiting in the dark. And far behind us, in the shadows of Saturn's rings, the Leviathan began to stir again, not to chase us, not yet, but to finish the war. Because the purists weren't going to let us reach the cradle. Not if they could help it. There was no warp lane, no gravitational pull, no point of reference, just the cold, humming silence of deep space, where even light was reluctant to travel. And yet we were being pulled, not by physics, not by engines, but by something older than either. The cradle was near. You didn't see it with your eyes. You felt it, like a pressure in your skull, a memory you couldn't place. It wasn't a location, it was a summoning. We followed it across the edge of known space, 17 ships from 7 fractured colonies, engineers, pilots, civilians, soldiers who had walked off their posts, scientists who had burned their clearances just to see this through. They called us fanatics, heretics, traitors to the last war humanity would ever fight. But we called ourselves what we were, witnesses, and the cradle had chosen now to show itself. We dropped from warp near a dying star, its light stretched thin and fading, like it was ashamed to shine near what lay beyond. The void warped before us, bent in on itself, a tear in the sky, like reality had been stitched together wrong, and now the thread was unraveling. The cradle came into view, not as a station, not as a construct, but as a monolith, a floating impossibility. It looked different to every person who saw it. Some described it as a black sun, rimmed with fire. Others saw a cathedral made of bone and crystal. Me? I saw Earth. Not the dead husk it had become, but Earth as it used to be. Sky blue, oceans full, green and alive. A vision of what we lost. I stepped out onto the command deck of the Ararat as the shard pulsed in my pocket. Warm, like it knew this was home. The other ships held position. Quiet, still, watching, waiting for my signal, and I had none to give, because I had no idea what was coming. The cradle spoke again. No voice, just understanding, a transmission of thought, a tide of knowing. One speaks, all are judged. I collapsed to my knees. Visions returned, flashes of human history, both known and forgotten. Children ripped from shelters on bombed colonies, executions on alien soil, torture chambers hidden inside human science outposts. Earth wasn't innocent. We never were. And yet, there were other memories too. A boy giving his last ration to a dying friend. A woman refusing to launch a nuclear payload despite orders. A father shielding a child from plasma fire during the first invasion. We were monsters. We were saints. We were everything in between. And that terrified the cradle. I awoke hours later, still in my command seat, sweating, trembling, and no longer alone. Across from me stood a figure, vaguely human, tall, rigid, skin like white marble fractured with light. It didn't blink, didn't move, it just waited. I spoke first. "What are you?" It tilted its head slightly. "I am interpretation. Your species cannot comprehend what I truly am." I appear in forms your mind permits. Are you the cradle? I am its voice. Then speak. It stepped closer. Your kind burned the sky and called it justice. You built war machines and named them guardians. You buried the truth, then claimed victimhood when the galaxy feared you. I clenched my fists. We were attacked first. Were you? Or did you provoke retaliation with your silence and your secrets? You saw what they did to Earth. I did, and I saw what you did to the rest. My chest burned. Guilt, anger, a mixture of both. We never had a choice. You always had a choice, the voice whispered. You just made the ones that served your fear. I stepped forward. We're not perfect. We never will be, but we've earned our right to exist, to learn, to grow, to fail. It stared. And what have you learned? I said nothing. It reached into the air, and images appeared between us. Leviathan, powering its primary cannon. Earth, still smoldering from alien fire. A child, alone in space, drifting with an oxygen leak from a refugee ship. A fleet of human warships, orbiting a cradle world, preparing to burn it. We learned to fight, I said, to survive. And yes, we've learned how to kill better than anyone else in the galaxy. But that's not all we are. I took a breath. I've seen kindness in trenches, mercy where none should exist. I've seen soldiers lay down their lives not for orders, but for strangers. I looked the figure in its radiant eyes. I won't justify every horror, but I won't let you erase the good either. The voice paused, then said, You do not seek mercy, you seek permission. I felt a weight in those words, crushing, immense, and somehow true, because deep down, maybe I wasn't looking to redeem humanity. Maybe I just wanted to be told it was okay, that all the fire and blood had meant something. But the cradle wouldn't give me that. It wouldn't lie to make me feel better. It would only show me a mirror, and in that mirror I saw what we really were. Not chosen, not cursed, just capable. The cradle turned away. There is one path left. What? Conflict. I stepped forward. We're not here to fight. It doesn't matter what you intend. Others are coming. The screen on the Ararat flickered. Red lights, alerts, pings, incoming signatures. Dozens, hundreds. The Leviathan had arrived, and behind it, every purest ship that still drew breath. They found us, and they were ready to finish what they started. Outside, the cradle pulsed once, then sealed itself. No longer a temple, now a vault. And we were standing on the doorstep, while our own species pointed guns at us. Wraith stormed into the chamber. They're broadcasting, they're demanding surrender. I nodded. Tell them to send one ship. What? One. He stared. I'm giving them one chance. One. 10 minutes later, the enemy envoy ship docked. Out came Admiral Cylon, second only to Nox. He looked like a skeleton in a uniform, barely alive, but still sharp as razors. He looked at me with disgust. This is what you gave everything up for? He gestured to the cradle, now dormant, silent. A myth? A riddle box floating in nowhere? I didn't answer. You could have led the fleet, he sneered. You could have been history's vengeance. I still can, I said softly. But not yours. You think this thing is salvation? No, I said. I think it's a test. Cylon stepped closer. Then let's see how you score. And he drew a blade. He moved fast. Old soldier, well-trained, but I wasn't unarmed. We clashed in the light of the cradle. Two fragments of a shattered people. Steel scraping, sparks flying. No guards, no honor, just fury. He cut deep into my side. I broke his wrist with a knee. He tried to stab me in the neck. I knocked him flat. Then I stood over him, blade pressed to his throat. He stared up at me, unafraid. "Do it," he spat. "Finish the story." But I didn't. I dropped the blade, stepped back, and turned away. "You're not worth our future," he snarled, but said nothing else. Outside, the Ararat's systems blinked. The cradle had reopened, and a new message emerged. One chose restraint, one chose understanding. Now all must choose. Every ship, ours and theirs, received it. And in that moment something changed. Cylon was pulled away by his own guards. The purists didn't attack. They didn't retreat, either. But they stopped. And listened. That night, I stood on the command deck, blood still seeping from my ribs, but I was alive. And the cradle? It had opened a door, a literal one, a gateway, a tear in the void, a new system, uncharted, untouched, a beginning. And the cradle's final message rang out to every ship, every captain, every species listening. We do not crown kings. We do not offer dominion. We offer a path. But you must walk it as you are, not as you wish to be. I looked at the fleet, at Earth's last fire, at the ones who had followed me into hell, and I said the only words that mattered. Let's find out what's on the other side. The cradle's final gateway shimmered like a curtain made of liquid void. It didn't ripple with light. It didn't hum with power. It simply existed, quietly, as if the universe had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. 17 ships from my side, 89 from the purest fleet, and not one of them fired. We hovered in a silence so thick it felt sacred. And still, I waited. Because walking through that gateway wasn't war. It was surrender. Not to an enemy, but to uncertainty, to evolution, to something beyond our reach, maybe even beyond our right. I stood at the bow of the Ararat, patched from the previous battle, stained with blood and questions. I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt clean. I wasn't following orders anymore, not chasing revenge, not carrying the weight of humanity's rage. I was just Miles Grant again, a broken pilot, forged in fire, dragging what was left of his people to the edge of destiny. Behind me, Wraith approached. No armor this time, just a soldier in a faded jacket, carrying nothing but a cigarette and that same deadpan stare. "You still think we make it through?" he asked. "No." "Then why go?" I looked at the gate. "Because maybe we don't deserve to survive as we are." He flicked the cigarette over the rail and crossed his arms. "You know, if we go through, there's no going back." "That's the point." Wraith nodded once. "Then let's make it mean something." The cradle didn't demand all ships enter. It asked, "One ship must walk first. Let the others choose to follow." I knew what it meant. The Ararat was the message, and I was the pen. Before departure, I sent one final transmission. To all human fleets, all colonies, all survivors, all enemies. "This is Commander Miles Grant. Earth is gone. The war is dying. But something else is calling us. The cradle isn't a god or a weapon. It's a mirror, and what it reflects is the truth we never wanted to face. I don't offer peace. I don't offer answers. I offer a door. And if we walk through it, we don't get to bring our monsters with us. No flags, no fleets, no vengeance. Only who we are, and who we're willing to become. If we survive, let history say this was the moment we tried to be more." Then I cut the transmission, and the Ararat surged forward, straight into the unknown. The moment we crossed the gate, I expected pain, madness, death. But I felt none of those things, just stillness, like the moment between lightning and thunder. Then reality snapped forward. And I saw it. Not a planet, not a system, but a canvas, a place unformed. Space that hadn't been painted yet. No stars, no suns, no sound, just a field of possibility. The cradle had brought us to the beginning, not of time, but of choice. and slowly, one by one, the others followed. Wraith's old ship, the Hammerfall. The Oathkeeper, once a purist dreadnought, now stripped of insignia. A ship from the Europa Freehold. 2 civilian transports full of rogue engineers and scientists. Even the smallest defected Union scout craft, silently following our wake, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of desperation. They all arrived. But there was no celebration, no speeches, no fanfare, just understanding. The cradle spoke one last time, not in our minds, not in our dreams, but through the stars themselves. They formed shapes, constellations that pulsed with meaning. Here, you will build, not for conquest, not for defense, but for understanding. The galaxy does not need another empire. It needs a lesson. You will be that lesson, or you will fall again. And then, the voice went silent, forever. The cradle didn't give orders. It left, disappeared into the canvas, leaving us with nothing but each other. And so we began. No blueprints, no allies, no map, just the raw elements of matter forming in the blank void, gifted perhaps by the cradle, or maybe left by the first civilization to come before us. We called the place Genesis Rift. Some began building habitats, others grew hydrodomes, terraformers, research outposts. But what mattered most wasn't the tech. It was the change. The purists didn't call themselves that anymore. They stopped marking their hulls with rank, started sharing engines, not hoarding them. Even the most hardened veterans softened, because in the rift there was no audience to impress, only the truth to live up to. I didn't build. I watched, let others take the lead. I had brought them here. That was enough. Until one day, Wraith approached me at the edge of the construction zone. "You're not going to lead this?" "I already did. You should name the capital." I looked out at the beginnings of a city. Low orbit, held together with gravity anchors and faith. "Call it Ashbourne," I said. He smirked. "After Earth?" "No," I said. "After what came after it." Years passed, and the galaxy moved on. The Union never found us, or maybe they did. But by then, we weren't worth hunting. Earth's wrath had quieted. Its fire was no longer a weapon. It was a hearth. The cradle never returned. But its final gift remained. A chance, not to rewrite our past, but to finally own our future. They still tell stories about us, out there in the stars, about the humans who unleashed hell after their world died, about the Armada that made entire empires tremble. But the best story, the one they whisper to their children, is about how we stopped. About how, when given the chance to conquer everything, we chose to build instead. The galaxy underestimated us, and we proved them right. But when we had the power to become their nightmares, we became something they never expected, something worse than monsters. We became human,